term. This is not going to be a solution for us. Never mind over the next 10 or 20 years. The question begged, how can we get out of this mess? Well, I'm a kind of utopian guy, you know. I remember the 60s with a certain fondness. You know, the colors were very bright. The sexual partners were very agreeable and willing. The grades were all pass-fail. Yeah, but utopia, unfortunately, another man with a globe, utopia, unfortunately, has come in for something of a bad rap since the end of the Second World War, and understandably so. You know, for the whole generation of thinkers who grew out of that experience, you know, Hannah Arendt of the world, utopia was tarred as the inevitable omega point of any kind of idealistic line of thinking. That the last stop on the train to utopia for these people was always Auschwitz. And so, you know, we've done our contribution to modeling the dystopian future. You know, whether it's the kind of high modernist Villeneuve ideas or the kind of dystopianism of Blade Runner. You know, it is perplexing, and I raise this in the sense that, you know, other people have written about this more lucidly than I. And, you know, there's a bit of a utopian revival from David Harvey and a variety of others who are sort of neo-utopians. But, you know, from our perspective, you know, unfortunately, the most powerful utopian imaginings, at least graphically, you know, I always ask my students on the first day of graduate school in urban design, you know, bring some images of some fabulous utopian environment. It used to be, you know, until I, you know, been smacking them around for 8 years now, I'd always get this image at the bottom. This was perplexing to me. Why bring in Blade Runner? I think the reason is that the kind of the visual creativity that lies behind this scene is so much more mesmerizing than the standard issue architectural product. That when you are forced into a kind of artistic fantasy of the constitution of utopia, it will be, I dare say, and these are value-free words. It will be different. It will be weird. It will have an element of strangeness. It will venture beyond the conventions with which we are accustomed to design cities. But here's another utopian vision. Ebenezer Allen. And you know, the more I look at this diagram, and I dare say, this is the master plan for Hanoi, you know, in sketch form, you know, the more logic there is. You know, cities are growing exponentially. You know, and our two characteristic solutions to the problem of urban growth, which is to say megacities and sprawl, are simply not on. I mean, these cities, these environments are intractable, they're ungovernable, they suck. This is a more beautiful vision. You know, it's about compaction, it's about intercommunication, it's about rethinking the relationship of the city and the countryside. Reestablishing the validity of that difference, which is so much gone by the boards. And so I conclude, you know, it's again, this is the Nuremberg Woodstock slide, is that if it is impossible to make this simple distinction within the field of the idea of utopia, people are fools. Auschwitz and Christiania are not the same, even though they are both, in terms of a certain kind of oversimplified ideological construction, utopian ideas. And so I introduced the word of the evening, not original with me. I think this is a Patrick Geddes, still well worth reading, this guy. Patrick Geddes' footage, in which he simply adds the E to the front of utopia in order to take it out of the Thomas More no-place reading, and to simply speculate, and I think there is no better articulation of our tasks as architects and urbanists than making better places. What the nature of the better is, you know, Eric will, you know, give us the Platonic reading at the end of the evening. You know, something that is obviously in need of lively disputation, but I don't think we should be shy about investing in the idea that our gig is to make better places for better people. I want to live there, for God's sakes. I'm not exactly down with the system of governance, but it looks awfully groovy to me. And, you know, love that Judy Garland. So here is one of the first utopias I ever designed. I'm going to give you a little, history of Mein Kampf this evening. You see, I brought a smart sport jacket from the East. It's warm around here, which is great. This was a city I built 25 years ago. I just sat down one day and thought, well, let me just build a city. This became a kind of model for a style of research that I've been engaged in for a long time. Keep building these models. And the idea is that we're so imprisoned, like the functionaries in Hanoi, with a kind of deductive style of urban reasoning, where we solve a whole series of generalities and then home in on the particulars. The induction has an effect only at the end. So I'm wondering about a kind of fuzzier urban logic in which the representation itself is kind of slack, So I'm looking at this, and it's a huge model, so we know it's big. There are many different materialities. The colors of some are suggestive of familiar colors found in the environment. But the only thing that I will vouch for in terms of this model is that every difference represents a difference. So this is a proposition about a kind of degree of variety, about a kind of organizational thing. Only Iris, my shrink, knows why I am constantly drawing these circular forms. But if you all don't do it, it's okay. So one needs values in order to animate a kind of the relatively autonomous activity of designing. And again, this is one of the arguments I want to make to you tonight, is that the autonomy of designing, Eric was going on with this intrinsic, extrinsic, post-trinsic, extrinsic theory, whatever. So here is, I forget whether this is the extrinsic or the intrinsic virtue. But if design in its relative autonomy is one, then it is answerable to a series of values. So we have a way of vetting our design in terms not of a kind of a set of formal and taste-based issues, although that's important, more about that later, but in terms of what the utopian with an E city will be. And here are my list of criteria. It's finite. Its main measure is the human body. It works very hard. I'm in the Jane Jacobs, Kim Il-sung, Adolf Hitler autarkic import substitution mode in terms of my theorizing of urban economics. It is about its locale. It's complicated. It is equitable, always the goal. It's singular. I think every city has the right to its own set of differences. And it's green. So now we get into the work. I'm speaking unusually slowly, I noticed tonight. It's because of all the drugs I took on the airplane. In hopes of having a nap before I got out here. All right, so here's another early